I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max for about 2 weeks now, and I've come to the conclusion that it is the best iPhone that Apple has ever made. And I know they always say that, but this time it's true, and it's for one very specific reason. I wasn't expecting to get excited about the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Here comes another slab of glass and metal that looks really nice, is really expensive, and is very fast thanks to Apple Silicon. That's what I was expecting, and well, that's what we've got. And I can guarantee that's what you're expecting as well. However, having used the iPhone 15 Pro Max for 2 weeks, I've come to a conclusion that has really surprised me. Although this doesn't look like a very big update, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is, in my opinion, the best iPhone ever made. It might be the best smartphone ever made. And there's one main reason this is the case, which I'll get onto later. But speaking of cases, if you want to keep your iPhone 15 Pro Max as safe as possible, but not have a great big bulky thing attached to it, then please do not look any further than the PATRON Easy Case Pro 4. This is the one to go for if you want a really slim case. This is a military grade shockproof case made from aramid fiber and TPU combined. And that aramid fiber means this iPhone 15 Pro Max case is slim and strong. And chamfered edges make the case look even slimmer and more comfortable to hold. There's also a raised metal camera lip here which protects your very important iPhone 15 Pro Max camera system. And yes, it is MagSafe compatible for stable wireless charging. This really is the thinnest iPhone case I've ever used. It's got this 1.2mm lip around the display which protects the display but also doesn't make it feel like it's being hugged by a great big bear. So if you're into thin, durable, strong iPhone cases, what I recommend you do is get your iPhone 15 Pro Max, admire it naked for a bit, and then just put the PATRON case on it, and then thank me later. The link is below. Every time we get a new iPhone, there's always a new controversy, a new gate as they call it, and this time there are two that I want to very quickly address. The first one is bendgate, and we had this back in 2014 with the iPhone 6 Plus. Basically, if you take your phone, your iPhone 15 Pro Max, and do this really hard, I'm not really doing it, but if you do that properly, then it bends. Now, my advice with this, if you've had this problem, is stop doing this with your phone. Because if you do that, it will bend. The second and slightly more concerning issue is the overheating thing, where people have been reporting that the iPhone 15 Pro Max has been getting way too hot, even when doing nothing. Now the good news is, just before filming this video, Apple launched iOS 17.0.3, and according to Mark Gurman, who is the rumour master, that has fixed the overheating problems with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So, on to better things. The first thing I've learned about the iPhone 15 Pro Max over the last 2 weeks is the switch to titanium is absolutely inspired. And there's a reason you see the word titanium straight away on Apple's website, and also if you've walked past any retailers who are selling this phone, that is what you see. Titanium everywhere. But you won't know why this is such a big deal until you get one of these in your hands. The first thing is that it is noticeably lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. On paper it's not much, but if you weigh them side by side, this is definitely much lighter on its feet. And the net result of that day to day means it's a much easier phone to live with. It's still a huge device, don't get me wrong, but that lightness makes a massive difference in your pocket. The second thing is, well, just look at it. There's a reason people want to keep this phone naked, and there's a reason that a lot of people are going for this natural titanium colour. I very nearly went for white, and I'm glad I didn't, because this one is just utterly stunning. The iPhone Pro Max series has always looked very impressive, but there's just something about this titanium finish, the kind of matte finish on the back, and as I say, that natural titanium colour, which is the one that I recommend you go for. It does make this the most impressive looking smartphone, I think, on the market. And more importantly, I don't think the iPhone is ever going to look any better than this. However, none of that is the reason that I think the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the best iPhone Apple has ever made. That is something, it's something else. Despite my endless gushing about, yeah, you do have to still polish it quite a bit. People have talked about this. The band that goes around the phone does pick up smudges, but this is a reviewer thing, you don't need to worry about that. I have been gushing a lot about the iPhone 15 Pro Max today, but I'm under no illusion that we have reached peak smartphone. It's stagnating, there's no two ways about it, which means the manufacturers like Apple, Samsung, Google, they have to dig really deep to find things that make a measurable difference each day. So the design that I talked about a moment ago, the titanium finish, all that stuff, that is an aesthetic thing. It's not something that makes a difference to your everyday life, apart from you looking at it and thinking, this thing's just beautiful. Equally, USB-C. We've finally got rid of the lightning port on the iPhone. That's very exciting. It enables things like being able to record very high resolution ProRes video to an external SSD, and it does mean finally I can just take the cable that is charging my headphones out of the headphones, unless they're AirPods Max, and just plug it straight into this iPhone, which makes a massive difference, mainly to me. So again, that's just it's a reviewer thing, it's a convenience thing, but it doesn't set the world alight. The thing that does set the world alight with the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the camera system, and more importantly, that 5x zoom. This is equivalent to about 120mm on a proper lens, and I can't stop using it. Again, this is an inspired choice by Apple. If you look at the competition, so for instance, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, which I compared this against recently, I'll put a link above, that has the optical zoom range of 3x and 10x. And 3x is okay, but it's not that much different to 1x. And 10x is just, well, it's impressive, but it's just way too much for most scenarios. So in this video, I'm only going to show you photos from that 5x camera because I think you're going to be impressed. And that's because this extra reach is practical enough to get you out of trouble when you're struggling to get close to a subject, but it also adds some lovely compression to portraits, to city shots, and when you want to pick out certain details in the landscape or in certain buildings. While I was walking around London last week, I couldn't help but continually switch to that 5x zoom range. It just makes the camera system on the iPhone 15 Pro Max feel new, fresh, and capable of inspiring far more creativity. And it is worth remembering that you don't get that 5x zoom on the standard iPhone 15 Pro. This is a Pro Max only feature. But what is absolutely stunning with this 5x zoom is the low light capabilities. That 5x zoom range is an absolute beast in low light situations. In fact, I cannot get over how good these photos are from London. This was night. It was pitch black in certain areas. Okay, there's quite a bit of lighting going on in some of these shots, but if you just look at the quality of these images, the lack of noise, the sharpness, the detail, we haven't had this degree of optical zoom on an iPhone ever. And the image quality that comes out of that lens, along with the low light capabilities, easily make this the most impressive upgrade to the iPhone 15 Pro Max this year. Trust me, if you're considering between the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pro Max, that 5x zoom alone should be enough to justify the more expensive purchase. As for the rest of the camera system updates, I haven't really found myself drawn to the 28mm and 35mm focal lengths, which you get, confusingly, by pressing the 1x button 3 times. You go between 24, 28 and 35. 28 and 35 are just a bit too similar to 24 to be exciting. But what is very useful is the action button. So this button on here, which replaces the classic rocker switch for the mute button, which we all used occasionally, or if you're me, you used it once when you first got the iPhone, you switched it to mute and then left it like that. But this new action button can be customized to, well, to do all sorts of things. People have done some very clever shortcut stuff with it, and my advice with this really is have a play with it, do some silly shortcuts and things, but I can almost guarantee you'll return to using it just for the camera. It sounds like such a small thing, but just having that button there where you press and hold for about a second to get into the camera system and then use it again to take the photo is incredibly useful. But there is one big question which I guess you need answering given that you're watching an iPhone 15 Pro Max review, which is, should you buy this phone? If you have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, no, this is not worth the upgrade unless you really want that 5x, which I do worry I might have tempted you into. However, if your iPhone is earlier than that, so if it's an iPhone 13 Pro Max or a 12 or an 11 or even older than that, just get this phone. We've never had a more complete iPhone ever, and I honestly would skip the Pro. The only problem is that Google has just announced the Pixel 8 Pro, which I'm reviewing next week, so make sure you hit the bell and subscribe and all that stuff. That phone could cause a problem for this one. But if you're not bothered about Android or Pixels and that sort of stuff, just get the Pro Max. And if you'd like to see how this fared against the S23 Ultra, keep watching for a link.